sandwiched in. This is going to be our last book review for this season. And today we have All Little Hopes by Leah Weiss, and our reviewer is Maureen, Nicolo. And Maureen is a retired Elmira City School District teacher. And for 5 years, she was a Learn and Serve America coordinator for 18 area schools, where students and teachers assisted in developing community projects based upon their classroom learning. Maureen was also a Corning Community College faculty liaison for ACE courses. Maureen was also a Corning Community College faculty liaison for ACE courses in regional high schools. So without delay, Maureen.
Hello, everyone. Whoops, I forgot to turn the mic. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here and to see so many familiar faces. I've been a member of some book groups through the years, but this is a challenge for me. I did exchange thoughts on books with other people, but now I'm sharing on my own. So, without further ado, I will start. The novel I chose to review is All Little Hopes by Leah Weiss. Oh, and this is the real. It was published in 2021, and I hope you enjoy hearing about it as much as I enjoyed reading it. Some of my background growing up influences how I related to this book. I grew up on a small family farm in northeastern Pennsylvania. As the oldest of 4 children, I had 2 sisters and 1 brother. I lived with my mom and dad, my grandma and grandpa, and my Aunt Bee. That's right, I had 5 adults who read to me and who helped to instill the love of books. My mom told me that as a child, I walked around our home with a stack of books looking for a reader, and I usually found one. In the prologue, Lucy, a main character, introduced her family, and she had 4 sisters and 2 brothers. Those siblings and her and she lived with Mama and Daddy and a grandmother. They all lived together on a tobacco farm in North Carolina. It was in eastern North Carolina. All Little Hopes illustrates the advantages of a multi-generational family living together. I'm not sure that I fully appreciated, as the time, how wonderful that experience was for me. Oma, the grandmother of the family, grew up. She was born there, and she grew up in Germany. She had recently passed away, but the tales she told lived on. For example, the Walperdinger. It's a mythical creature that originated in German folklore. They had a Walperdinger in the Brown family home. It was stored in a wooden box in Oma's room on top of the Bavarian dresser. As the story goes, Oma's grandfather came upon the creature while he was hunting, and he preserved it for all time. The Walperdinger in their family was 17¼ inches long, and it was made up of equal parts rabbit, roebuck antlers, and falcon wings. It was said that they only survived in the crisp mountain air of the Bavarian forest. The brothers Grimm first talked about the Walperdinger in 1753, and the Brown family actually benefited by having their own Walperdinger because it made the fairy tales they told more realistic and more believable. Of course, Walperdingers were really stuffed parts of real animals. They were lucky to have them. Lucy was 13 as the book began. Lucy said that Oma secretly told her that she was her favorite. Of course, grandmothers never do that, of course. But she was inquisitive, she had a deductive mind, and she collected obscure words. Her favorite word was enigma, for without mystery to challenge a curious mind, it stars. Grady called his sister Lucy high and mighty because she uses $10 words in a 10-cent town. Out loud, she calls him rude. Mama says Lucy can be a little insensitive. She says language is meant to communicate, not to separate. So Lucy says she mostly spends her $10 words inside her head. I wanted to learn more about Leah Weiss, the author, she's gone now. We'll get her back in a minute. I wanted to learn more about her, so I did a little research. She was born in 1947, and she published her first book, If the Creek Don't Rise, when she was 70 years old. All the Little Hopes is her second book. Both are set in the South, and both of them are historical fiction. Leah was born in North Carolina, although she moved to Virginia at the age of 10 with her family. She wanted to know more about about North Carolina, and she went and asked her mother about experiences growing up in North Carolina. And that memoir that she wrote planted the seed for parts of the book I'm reviewing. Leah was a school teacher for 23 years. She learned skills in music education to help her with her writing. She broke things down into simple parts, and it helped her to master writing and complete a project. A friend of Leah's told her that she had a keen sense of humor, and she had a way with words, and he even suggested that she write a book. She had a routine anyway of writing 1,000 words a day. She said she did it to prime the pump so she would be able to write some more. She asked herself, does the world really need another book? And her answer was, yes, if it's unique. And I think this book is. All the Little Hopes was divided into 3 sections, 1943, 1944, and 1945, during the years of World War II. As the story begins, we learn that the men are off to war, including 2 from Lucy's family, her brother Everett and her brother-in-law Wade. Lucy said that Mama was wound tight as Oma's cuckoo clock when she saw a government car pull into the front of the house beneath the oak tree and stop. She feared that the government man was bringing grave news. They already had 2 blue stars in their window. She didn't want to see a gold star there. As it turned out, it was more happy news because the government man was asking how many beehives Lucy's father had. It turns out the answer was 100. Remember, they had a tobacco plantation too, plus 100 beehives. That's quite a lot. That would mean 1,000 pounds of beeswax and 8,000 pounds of honey a year. A brochure entitled Honeybees in Wartime was read by the family. If Mr. Brown agreed to help the war effort, he would be given barrels of cane sugar to help make syrup for the hives. And he would be paid for beeswax that the government needed. I don't know if anyone knows what they would need it for, but I'll tell you, they needed it for waterproofing canvas tents and for lubricating machinery, guns, rifles, bullets, anything that would rust. So, the boy, this was a bonus as far as Mama was concerned. The boys in the family could be brought home from the war to work in the hives. That her wish didn't come true, even though she wrote letters to them and begged them to come home. So, I did some more research, because I love research, on honeybees in wartime. And during World War II, beekeeping was declared war essential. Propaganda, I'm sorry about this, the quality of this, but I'll read some of what I could make out from this. It was probably because they were outdoors and they were, having problems in the keeping it so it would be able to be readable. Beware and waxing the way to victory. And this one says, these bees are a vital unit in national defense. That's right there. And they were warned not to open the beehives and also help win the war, protect bees. The propaganda posters were either warning people about something or encouraging people. I think this would do both. Encourage them not to touch the beehives and warn them if they touch the beehives, they would be in trouble. Okay, so the character development in this book I thought was excellent because it was a key to understanding the events in the plot. The plot of the book is fictional. It's all made up by Leah Weiss. But the events, many of them are historical events, and I learned a lot by reading this book. Did you ever start reading a book and get confused about who the characters are, and even resort to making a list to remember them? I have. Yep. So Leah Weiss has a gift using her magical words so that you truly know each character. I didn't make one list, which is unusual for me, about these characters. So we'll get back to Leah now. I really liked the organization in All the Little Hopes. Starting with Lucy Brown, chapters alternate between her and the second main character, Allie Burt Tucker. Each chapter is also named, with a title that's a hint to the contents. And every chapter tells a story from each girl's point of view. They had different backgrounds, different experiences, and even different ways of talking. Neither girl seemed anxious to grow up. It was a coming-of-age tale with a theme of friendship and family. Starting in chapter 2, we meet Allie Burt. She insists everyone call her Burt. And you know what? I think she likes short ways to say things because she called Lucy Brown Lou. So that's a hint there. Burt lives on the other side, the western part of North Carolina, so that's why there's so many differences. She lived in a North Carolina backwoods home with her pa, her ma, and her older sister, Ruth. When her pregnant mother dies, Bert's father sends Bert away on a one-way bus trip to live with his sister. And his sister happened to live in eastern North Carolina. Lucy and Bert met by chance. Lucy was sitting on a bridge, reading a Nancy Drew book, because she loves mystery. Bert sat down beside her. She was out on a little walk. I guess she was trying to get away from her aunt for a little while, her Aunt Violet. She sat down and chatted about her life. She chatted about her trip on the bus coming to where she was living now. And she even told Lucy her dream. Her dream was, I'm gonna fly in one of them aeroplanes. Lucy was so captivated by her and wanted to have her as her best friend, so she invited her to come home for dinner, warning Bert that her family members are all bibliophiles, which means, of course, they love to collect and share books. Bert says she doesn't mind because her folks are primitive Baptists. There is humor throughout the book, but many sad and trying times as well. Bert's aunt threw her out of the house on a rainy night, and she struggled to find her way back to the Browns' home again. The story of friendship between Lucy and Bert continues as she starts living with the Browns' large family. The girls share their thoughts up in the hayloft on the farm. When Bert blurts out a dark secret, Lucy tells her that she would be glad to share the burden because that's what best friends do. Throughout the book, they help each other to cope with life. Friends, of course, may have some disagreements sometimes. And as I will illustrate that with Lucy and Bert in just a moment. In an interview, Leah Weiss said, "I write books that can be read aloud, much like the Brown family tradition." When I was thinking about this review, that was my thought. I'd love to make parts of this book a read aloud, to share the language and flavor of the book, just as I enjoyed doing as a teacher. So now, I'm going to read a part of this book that spoke to me. This is about a third of the way through the book. By the way, the chapter is very short, so don't worry. It's about 1 or 2 pages. It's called Lucy, Humbling Experience. I hate everything about tobacco. I confide this to Bert as we stand at the edge of the field after supper, eating oatmeal raisin cookies. I know you don't smoke or chew, but how come you hate it? Because it's the most demanding crop a farmer can grow. At least that's what they say. All the plowing and planting and pampering baby seedlings when Mother Nature sends too much or too little rain. The hoeing to hack out weeds and picking off fat green hornworms that can ravage an entire crop. All the bent backs of men and women stooped over in the hot sun and windless heat to pick leaves from the bottom first. You don't do that kind of work, Bert says, and misses my point. No, but I see it. And I don't have to do something in order to know how it feels. She said, that ain't true. Doing and knowing go together, but seeing don't go with knowing. I feel a rise of annoyance that she doesn't grasp the importance of what I'm saying. I'm telling her a terrible secret I never spoke out loud before, and I'm making a pragmatic observation about my family's livelihood. She's talking about something else. For 100 years, my daddy's people have worked this farm, and it's never been easy. I can hardly remember when Daddy was pleased with the outcome and income when the tobacco market started late August and ended in October. He called the tobacco business a humbling endeavor. He said, tobacco has been valued all the way back to the Chesapeake colonies, back to the time when the tobacco paid taxes to the British Crown. It bought land and paid preachers to save souls. Daddy read it even bought used wives who husbands didn't want anymore. Mama thought that was a crying shame and told Daddy not to get ideas but she couldn't deny it since he'd read it in a book. Those glory days for tobacco are gone, but the gold leaf is still the money crop for farmers in my Carolina. The crop of 43 is over, and Daddy said he made enough for us to get by. Now Bert talks about something else, something different, and gets my dander up. She repeats, doing and knowing go together, but seeing and knowing don't. What does that even mean? Well, I could tell you about going hungry and missing breakfast and dinner and supper all day long. I could tell you how your insides grab and pucker for a scrap, for a crumb. And it's winter and the woods are mean and your mind forgets how to get you back home before dark. But telling you those words don't let you feel it, don't let you know hungry. One thing is words, the other's hungry. Oh Lord, did that happen to you? Did you go hungry? Maybe. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Bert, if that happened. We've been looking out at the field, but now she turns to me. What do you know about shame? She throws at me. If you got a smidgen of shame, it's because you picked it, not because it's real. I don't want to fight, Bert. I was saying I don't like tobacco. That's all. We finish our oatmeal raisin cookies, and Bert says, tobacco don't bother me. Good for you. I lift my chin in defiance, but I'm different. You might want to keep your thinking to yourself. Bert walks away. Now, I have to tell you that chapter did speak to me because I remember growing up on the farm and working very hard. Our whole family did. And I remember when Mother Nature didn't cooperate and sent too much or too little rain and crops were ruined. And I remember my daddy using some choice words because of the failure of some crops. So it was a very difficult thing. As I mentioned before, the Brown family loved books and sharing stories. Every night after supper, they gathered on the front porch to hear a chapter of one of the many books in their library. Daddy told the family that buying books is money well spent if it broadens your mind. Whenever anyone's curious and has a question in the Brown family, there are encyclopedias and many other books to find answers. Every Wednesday evening, the Browns invite anyone who would like to come to sharing of stories on the front porch. Once a year, they have a birthday party for a special book that Oma gave to them. It's The Velveteen Rabbit. Oma loved that book because of its wisdom. So she told scary stories with the Walperdinger, but she had other books that were special to the family and didn't scare the children so much. It became evident that Bert could not read. Mama had a plan. She used to be a school teacher, so she decided to homeschool Bert, and later Bert would do homework with the other children when they got home from school. Then, when she was ready, Bert would be prepared to read The Velveteen Rabbit aloud at the birthday party. Lucy was a bit jealous and thought that Bert shouldn't be given that special honor. Mama was the person with great wisdom, and she was upset with Lucy. When she asked if she wanted Bert to succeed, Lucy's answer was, I guess. Well, Mama put her hands on her hips. What kind of weak answer is that? She's your friend, someone who has not had your blessings in life. actually, well, Lucy was ashamed at that point. She really was. But she did demonstrate that she too had wisdom and good sense as the story went on. One time, Bert told her that she sounded like her mama. Sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and we do learn by example. Bert had a treasure box. Actually, it was an old cigar box with twine wrapped around it, in which she kept things that gave her comfort. Actually, they were stolen items from people she would like to remember. One example, Mama had a loose button on her dress, and she picked it off and put it on the windowsill. Well, one day when Lucy and Bert were cleaning the kitchen, Lucy was at the table wiping it down, and Bert quietly went over and picked that button up from the windowsill and slipped it in her pocket. No one saw her, she thought. Well, when Lucy's, she was convinced that Bert needed to feel better if the small items she collected could be returned to the owners. And she actually had some wisdom there because she was trying to take the burden off of Bert. It was a wise piece of advice. Bert listened, and she started to return those items. But the interesting part for me was Lucy told her, you can't just slip the button in Mama's sewing box. You have to come to her and say, I took this from you, and I want to give it back. I am sorry. So that was another part of the wise piece of advice. Now, there were two memorable characters in this book. At least for me, they were the most memorable, besides Lucy and Bert. One, those characters added a little bit of spice to the book. The first one was Lucy's Aunt Fanny Bell. She had a habit of saying things and saying words that were close to what she was trying to say, but not exactly. So an example of this is when Lucy's sister had a daughter while her husband was overseas. Helen didn't want to name the baby until he got back home again. So she called her baby girl. For months, she was calling her baby girl. Well, Aunt Fanny Bell called her Betty Gale. And that name, by the way, ended up being her real name. When she talked about an uncle, and this is her Aunt Fanny Bell was trying to talk to the girls about some of their family members and talked about this uncle who did some dastardly things to girls. She said he died an awful death due to syllabus. By the way, in that time, Lucy and Bert were both there, and Lucy was so confused because she knows the word syllabus and knew what it meant, and she was trying, what does that even mean? You know, just like before. Trula Freed was the other character. And Fanny Bell told Lucy and Bert that she had known Trula forever, and that she might be a gypsy or a Cajun or some kind of a mystic. No matter what, she somehow knew things that happened, maybe even before other people knew them, and she was always helpful to people and animals and worked to heal them. Now, in one part of the book, the community got back some news that a POW camp was being built and Germans would be living there. Before I go on, I have to tell you, I love history. I love it so much, and I always loved it when I was growing up and everything. I never heard that we had POW camps during World War II. I'm sure some of you did, but I didn't. So, there is an actual POW camp in North Carolina. I found out there were POW camps in 45 states during World War II. 700 camps stretched across the United States. It was estimated that 500,000 prisoners were brought to those camps. In North Carolina alone, there were 18. This is the part of the story that Leah Weiss's mother told her that inspired this book. Because Leah had not heard about the POW camps either. Another fascinating part of this book is when purple honey was discovered by Lucy's daddy in the hives. Some of them, it wasn't in all of them. But sure enough, purple honey exists. How do I know? Because I looked it up. I wanted to find out. It exists only in certain parts of central and eastern North Carolina. Mr. Brown sold the honey to moonshiners and gave Trula Freed 6 jars and kept 1 for the family. That was a fortunate decision for the Brown family. All but 3 members of the family came down with influenza. Mr. Brown was extremely concerned because when he was growing up and a little boy, he lost many family members due to the Spanish flu in 1918. Aunt Fanny Bell was visiting one day and noticed that everyone looked feverish and lethargic and was wondering what was going on. They didn't even make the connection that everyone was sick. Well, Aunt Fanny Bell knew something was wrong, so she sent her husband for the doctor, and the doctor came and examined everyone, and he made a list and told Aunt Fanny Bell, and she was organizing the entire community to take care of this family so they would be getting well. Aunt Fanny Bell called it the Gall Doubleday flu. Luckily, Trula Freed, here we go again with Trula, came back and came over to visit the family with purple tea and honey. That was the cure that was needed. The entire Brown family survived, even though they did survive and get well slowly because it was quite a process. And by the way, this part of the book was written more than a year before COVID-19, the pandemic that affected the world. Leah Weiss said that was a strange foreshadowing. In all the little hopes, there are mysteries to solve. 3 men are missing. So the girls become sleuths and investigate the cases, just like Nancy Drew. Lucy and Bert interviewed many people in the community about what happened to the men, and they even trespassed on other people's property and got in quite a bit of trouble when they asked a few too many questions. But the mystery was finally solved at the end of the book. If you want to find out about it, you're going to have to read the book. When the war ended, the people in the community celebrated by gathering together with music, singing, and church bells. Bert and Lucy ran to see our Germans, they called them. They asked permission, of course, because Mama was still a little bit leery about them going, but she gave them permission. The scene, it was really different at the POW camp because their homeland had surrendered months earlier, but with the fall of Japan, which just happened, the rebuilding after the war was taking place. The girls went and called out to their 2 farm workers. They knew about the end of the war, but they were downcast because their future was uncertain. Wolf and Joe would not have a tender homecoming waiting for them. On Christmas Eve that year, the prisoners invited everyone to their camp. The community realized that the POWs had become connected to them. The camp gates opened, and the guards' guns are shouldered. A German steps forward in the light, wearing an oversized red coat. He shouts, "Merry Christmas, Riverton!" The crowd clapped and wished that he was, they saw that he was so happy. They were whistling. He bowed and they clapped again. "I chosen to say, since English is good." He bows and they clapped again. "Today, 20 months for now, we come defeat, scared, tired, and German, and work hard for you. We not forget you. Tonight, we give to you a present, so you not forget us ever." Wolf came out and played Silent Night on Daddy's fiddle. People hum. Then he plays it again, and the prisoners sing in German. The prisoners made a party there for the community, in appreciation for the kind treatment they had received from everyone. A 16-piece, life-size nativity was brought out one by one, and this is a true part of the story, by the way. Sadly, it was destroyed by fire in 1958. Bert said, "How did we get here? How did something that don't make a lick of sense turn into this?" There are so many examples of friendship in all the little hopes. Another historical part of the book involved German handmade marbles. In the early 1900s, German marbles were one of the earliest types of marbles that were imported to the United States. They remain one of the most popular collectible marbles, and the children in the book, and all through the book, have collections. Now they're probably not these exclusive German marbles. Some of them were glass or, round beads, but they did play with marbles throughout the book. And Lucy's great-grandfather made marbles in Germany. He got not the best marbles because they were made in a factory, but any that were rejected, they let him collect them. And they put them in a jar and they kept them in the Brown family home. 42 marbles. Grady, Lucy's brother, became a champion mibster. He could draw a perfect 3-foot circle and play marbles and win almost every time. An exciting part was when he was invited to the POW camp to play marbles with a champion there, and they played with a 10-foot circle, and he had to learn how to play with a 10-foot circle, and that was probably a very difficult task. I want to show you 2 examples of the wording and the magical way that Leah Weiss wrote in this book. One was, Lucy and Bert walked into the POW camp to watch a marble match, and Lucy says how she feels. "The attention we garner is thick like sugar syrup, but tickles our skin like spider feet." And Bert described when she met Trula Freed. "When I lay my hands in Miss Trula's, something buzzes in my head like the beat of tiny angel wings, and warm honey runs through me and fills up the empty holes." I read, of course, many reviews. As usual, they're in the front of the book many times, and I read those reviews. I also read some that I found online. One that I thought was especially nice was a review by Wiley Cash from the New York Times, and in part he said, "Lucy Brown and Allie Burt Tucker will break your heart, but Leah Weiss's beautiful writing will sew it back together again." I totally agree. In fact, this is a book that I reread. Well, the first time I read it was with the feeling that I was doing this review. And the second time was purely for enjoyment. And it was a very pleasant read. I loved to do research as I was reading this book, as you probably have already guessed. I encourage you to do that, especially with historical fiction and nonfiction, because you can find out so many more details and so much more about what you may want to learn about those topics. I recommend that you search for author interviews on YouTube. Hearing Leah Weiss's voice as she described her journey in writing and as she read parts of the book aloud was wonderful. Of course, I left some parts out of the book in my review, but there are many wonderful moments you may like to read. I didn't want to spoil your enjoyment in case you choose to read All the Little Hopes, and I hope you do. Before I start a book, and after I finish it, I think about why the title was chosen. For All the Little Hopes, was Lucy hoping that others would appreciate her intelligence? Was Bert hoping that she could put her past behind her and have a family like the Browns? In the book, Mama says, hope is a road in life. It's easier to travel than despair. In this book, so many characters had little hopes, and they centered on friendship and belonging. And don't we all go through life having little hopes? I know that I do. I don't know if you have any questions. If yes, Dottie?
Well, you're such a great researcher, and maybe I didn't hear you explain what turned the honey purple, a certain plant?
There are a lot of theories about that. When I read it when I went online to find out about it, they said it could be they were eating maybe elderberries or some kind, or, well, getting the pollen and everything, or some other plants. They weren't sure. But the interesting part was, she was right, Leah Weiss was right in this. He had 100 hives. Mr. Brown had 100 hives. Some of them had purple honey and some did not. So it depended. And also remember that many of the times they were getting sugar water to put in the hives, and they didn't have to go forage out for the pollen that they needed to help with the hives. That's a good question. That's why I looked it up. You can even buy some on the internet if you want to, just so you know. I almost did, but I didn't. Anyway, I trust them that there is purple honey. Anything else? Anyone else have anything? I have one more little thing if you want to see this. I was listening to PBS one day, and there was a little kind of a lesson on finding out about a good book. A good book, and you'd have to fill in your own blanks. I happen to do it with this book. Notice I use purple for purple honey. A good book is full of emotion. It transports you to another time and place. It feels like an old friend. A good book is memorable. And I wanted to see, actually, if my granddaughter actually was at the house, and she, I don't know if I can find it here. She also did this, and I'll find, if I do find it, I'll tell you. I don't know what I did with it. Oh well. Anyway, that's kind of a fun thing. It would be a fun thing to do just with any book, just to see if you can come up with some ideas. But I do have to say, I did like this book a lot. I really did. I practiced it a lot of times. Yeah, don't roll your eyes. I practiced it many times, and every time it comes out different because I add different words in there, but I did have a guide here to help me so I didn't forget anything. All right, well, I really appreciate you coming today, and I hope you got some information and learned something. I learned something when I was doing this, so.
Thank you very much.